well, then you lose everything. Then you'll be without him for all eternity. And so that bet costs you pretty much nothing. So to wager against God is a terrible bet. And he added, for those who are still skeptical, that even in this life, those who believe in God are happier and lead more fulfilling lives. So what is there to lose? Come and see. So that's for the total skeptic. Maybe when our kids are teenagers, that'll be the one to use. But throw it out there, you know? It's like saying, well, I have a winning ticket for $1 million for the lottery, and all you have to do is ask me for it. And then your friend says, well, now I don't believe you, so I'm not even going to ask. It's a silly bet. Make the bet. So I'll have a little bit more about science, and I think we're almost done. And we talked about this before, which is that science and reason, they can't contradict each other because it all comes from God and from God as his creation. And also science can't really prove whether God exists or not. There can be elements of science that point to him, but no one would ever be able to prove God exists by science. And that's something that you hear sometimes in the news, or Richard Dawkins or some of these other atheistic scientists go around and say, oh, well, evolution proves that God doesn't exist. But, you know, as we looked at in the argument from design, well, evolution, which is the ordered appearance of species through natural selection, makes total sense if God, as the universal designer, wanted to come up with means with which to create the things that are in our world. So Catholics generally do not have much of an issue with evolution. Now, if they try to say, well, evolution then shows that there was no God, well, then that's really philosophy, and we need to point that out, that they're switching from science to philosophy. But for us, that God is the designer, and that might be a mechanism he would use, is a perfectly natural thing to understand and believe. And we talked about already the need that modern physics is showing, the need that the universe was created, or at least it had a beginning. And so it hasn't universally or eternally existed, but it had a beginning. And so it needs a big banger, a creator that created it. And another thing that scientists have talked about over the last probably 40 years or so, they call it the anthropic principle. And if you search for that on Google, you'll find a whole bunch of links about this. But it's basically the idea that it seems like the whole universe was created just for the existence of human life. And so when you look at, I think they're up to maybe 30 or 40 constants, like universal constants, like the electromagnetic force, like the force of gravity, like the strong force which keeps the atoms together or the neutrons and the protons together in atoms. Well, if some of those, it's like 10 to the 140th power chance, or like if you made a change in the value of it by that much, the universe as we know could not exist, and humanity and life as we know it could not exist. And when you put together, there's like 30 or 40 of these constants, it's just an incredibly unlikely chance that we would be here. And so that points to, that's why they call this the anthropic principle, it points to that something must exist, someone, a creator perhaps, that they won't call it that necessarily, but that points to that there is a universal creator, a universal designer. So I think that fits into that universal design argument. All right, so throughout this talk, we've shown that there's ample evidence upon which to base our belief in God, and we have reasons to believe. And these arguments, we can use these to engage our culture and to transform the culture. And we need to have the courage to share these truths when we're talking with others and sharing our faith. And I thought this quote from St. Augustine really summed everything up, which was that, you have made us for yourself, O Lord, and our hearts are restless until they rest in you. So, or if with the kids, there's the donut man. If you ever seen the donut man? So, we're like a donut, and God is what fills the donut and makes us whole. And so we can feel confident in sharing these things with people and helping them to see God in the world around them. So I have one more chart, and this was some resources that I used to put together this talk. And so the Catechism has a lot of great stuff in it, and everyone should have a catechism. And it's really nice, short statements of our faith and what we believe, and kind of fleshes things out and points to Scripture and other places we can go to look for more information. And then I pulled a lot of this from Peter Kraft, who's a philosopher at Boston College, and I brought some of those books here with me so you can take a peek. But Catholic Christianity is a kind of like a catechism that he wrote based on the Catholic Catechism. And there's a handbook of Catholic apologetics, and it has a summary of 20 proofs of God's existence, so some of the ones that we had here and a bunch of others all in one spot. And Fundamentals of the Faith is one that is just a series of different short, like 3 or 4 page, I think there might have been even newspaper articles or something at one point, but they pulled them together into a book, and it's about our faith, what we believe. And so some of those talk about God and proofs of his existence. They talk about other religions and then other Catholic beliefs. And so that's a pretty good one. And then there's a couple talks that he gives on his website that I've listened to dozens of times and are pretty cool. So that's it.